treated GIs are called Utopia.
If you take a human being and you isolate them and you cut off that person from other people, if you deprive them of their social, they cease to be a human being. Humans become human through human contact.
Products of customary quality. The traditional industry has been reconverted and modernized, adding new products of customary quality.
It was so totally different. I mean, we had one telephone and no hours in front of TV. There was no... my father didn't believe in having a radio even. And it wasn't until he died that my mother had one. We used to get round the piano and have the sing-songs and ordinary games that wouldn't even rate not a quarter of an hour.
What modern life, industrial life, has been doing over the last 200 years is increasing in speed. As it increases in speed, as we want information faster, we want to be served quicker at our McDonald's and our supermarkets. We want people around us to do their job more speedily.
Well, what are they busy about? Making money. That's the general thing, that you've got to make a success by having a nice pile in the bank. And we all are inclined to think of old people as of not much value. I mean, in terms of making money, for instance.
So I can see how women have a lot of pressure put on them, not just monetary-wise. I understand that a lot of women don't have a choice. They just have to go to work because the cost of living is just so high. It's not just enough to be a mother. They need to go out and fulfil themselves and have a career, and in some ways it's put a lot of pressure on us to achieve everything. Quite frankly, you have to wonder where the energy goes and how long you can keep all of that up.
want some kind of extended family, like they have in many other countries and cultures.
Grandparents and aunts and uncles.
Yeah. And you know, it depends on the culture, but this culture we're living in at the moment, you know, it's not so much, there's not so much of that, is there?
Once you've completely isolated the person and completely reduced them back to zero, you can then fill up their minds, so the theory went, with new information, new ideologies. So marasmus, brainwashing, are rooted in warfare, conflict, humans attempting to degrade and dehumanize their fellow human being.
I really enjoyed watching my babies as they discovered life. It was so exciting for them, you know, reaching out and touching and looking and getting excited about new noises. And I think as a parent looking on to a little one discovering the world, it's like you discover it all over again with them. And then to have them turn around in a few years and say to you, "Mum, I'm bored," you have to wonder where you went wrong. And I'm finding the older they get, the harder it is. The more they're saying they're bored. And it's like if they don't have something to entertain them, they can't figure it out themselves. A lot of this technology tends to pull them away and keep them on their own. It's hard to keep your kids grounded into what is real, because so much of what they are bombarded with isn't.
The world was very slow. And we lived in a small country, not even a town. And my father had taken up land in this valley. And he was a very hard worker. But he always found time to have a play with us, and we loved that. And I know personally wouldn't go to sleep unless he came and held my hand and told me a story.
One of the worst aspects of modern life and its increasing demands on us and the way we are being punished if we don't perform more quickly, more efficiently, and so forth, is being felt by young families. They're constantly being undermined, being interrupted as a family.
You can see the cracks everywhere of that sort of thinking. If by working that hard that your family misses out in the process, and by the time you get to retirement you've used up your life force and you don't have any energy left for your children's children and the people around you.
It's amazing, when you first go to a place, you have lots of people coming to see you. After about a month or 3 weeks, you only have occasional people. They've visited you and they've cheered you up or whatever. Their duty's done for the time being. And it does get a bit lonely.
as this pace has quickened, the effect on people has been quite insidious. That is, we've become dehumanised without recognising it in many ways. And the dehumanisation which is occurring can be likened to a form of marasmus. We are literally speeding ourselves to death, cleaning out what it means to be human. And we're becoming, if we're not careful, a society, a world of global isolates. Every one of us working in our own increasingly individual, increasingly rapid world where what matters is speed for the sake of it. You could call it as a kind of spiritual marasmus or a condition created by increasing dehumanisation of the human spirit. It's not till you pull yourself away from the hustle and bustle of contemporary life that you begin to see with clarity the reality that you are in the midst of. That's why historically all the great mystics of history have gone into the deserts or up to the tops of mountains or into the jungles, out on voyages on the ocean to contemplate, reflect on what it means to be human. And this kind of self-stripping of the masks and the incrustations of damage that's been done by racing, can only be done by the individual themselves. So this is an isolation which is the opposite of marasmus, because marasmus is an enforced, violent isolation of people doing damage. But this kind of isolation is where, ironically, all of us have to go back to at some point, and should go back to more often, to find what's real, or what's beating, to hear the pulse of the earth and the sea and the sky.
You still need your own, your own space.
A measure of independence is absolutely essential, and in anything.
I think sometimes it's all too easy to become very selfish in that mode and only look at, what's important to you.
I mean, it's useless to advise people because they know perfectly well if they're indulging themselves that there is a cost to pay.
Life is eternal. Time is eternal. Watch the time. Time will reveal. Watch the time.
Everything is pushed at us as though we are the most important object in the universe. How much me is sufficient before it becomes self-absorption, narcissism, self-worship. And if only I can be happy looking into myself and satisfying myself, I can make somebody else happy. It's quite interesting that that isn't the route that most of the mystics down through the ages have said, and much of the social scientific research has backed up. What they've said is that you find fulfillment, happiness for yourself when you help somebody else achieve their needs.
Think of the amount of money that we had as we grew up. It was practically nothing. And yet we had plenty.
I think the very message that I'm really trying to get across to my kids is that people are far more important than anything else. If I can teach them that in a material world to look beyond that and find meaning in themselves for who they really are, and to see other people for who they really are, then I will have achieved something.
It's a new generation.
They've actually been busy trying to come up with an artificial womb. Here you have the scenario now where, you know, a couple can plan for children, have the children, and all done outside and
major breakthrough! Hey!
I know several people who would be very pleased with that.
Look, this is great, you know, I can continue to work, I can email as much as I want to.
I saw a thing, I don't know if it was a spoof thing, but it definitely wasn't presented as a spoof thing. I saw it on TV about people having sex over the internet. They had this kind of suit with electrodes in the right places, and, you know, a designed sex suit, and you put it on and put all your bits in all your bits, okay, and then there's mild electrodes, and away you go, and you just, you know, you have a picture of your girlfriend on the other side of the world, and you press that, ooh, tingly.
Well, more and more technology seems to be expanding, you know, to create this convenience.
Yeah.
At the same time, creating this impersonal world, you know, or the virtue world, as you're saying, with the virtual reality. Say, we don't need to touch anymore.
Modern society can sometimes leave us feeling that it's just inevitable. Things just have to be this way. And boy, the best thing I can do is just slot in and do my little bit and hope I have a decent life, and nobody sues me, and my kids grow up without being addicted to drugs, and I can die in peace. But life shouldn't be a series of fears that we feel we have to hold back and negotiate, but something wonderful that we can explore and create and make wonderful, because we have this freedom to make a noise about it and to build up again, rather than to be constantly worrying and adding up figures. And how am I going to get over that?
What are you earning? How are you spending your money? you must make money.
Sometimes I feel like I'm just losing the battle. That everything out there is so much bigger and more powerful than what I can have to offer my kids. I think if I gave up, that would send the message to them that all the other messages in their life that they're getting is what they have to live by. So I can't give up.
A society without friendship is a society of robots, of mechanical producers. What we look for in people now, it seems, is how can they be useful to me? And when we should be focusing on people for what we are, that is human beings who need constant nurturing all through our lives. Never a point at which we can take each other for granted. Friendship is the basis of a society that will make it human and keep it human.
You were like 55 right now.
Well, that would suck because the emphasis within our society is that beauty is synonymous with youth. That's different in different cultures also. I mean, I think that because there's not such an emphasis on youth in, say, like Native American cultures and other cultures, there is room for the elderly. There's respect for the elderly. In our society, I think because there's an emphasis on beauty, and if you're not beautiful, and that oftentimes is synonymous with not being old. If you're old, you get tossed aside because you don't fit what we want from you.
How do you treat an older person when you run across them? And have you had a meaningful conversation recently with someone over the age of 50, besides your dad?
Besides
or
my
mom?
parents, yeah. Well, I mean, it's hard because it's almost like, especially, have you had a meaningful discussion with someone over 65? No, those people are hidden away in our society. You walk around downtown here, how many people are you going to see over 65? Even 70. And you don't have a lot of conversations, even though they have a lot to offer. I mean, I think when I call my grandfather every now and then, and he has so much to offer. I mean, he's like 83 now. But in general, no. there's not a lot of elderly people that I interact with on a daily basis.
I used to have a lady that I would go visit who I totally loved. She was like a mentor in life to me, you know? But I had a relationship with her maybe for half a year or so. And then it just got sort of too hard to maintain it. You know, I had to always walk over and see her, you know. She wasn't really mobile and stuff, and so, I mean, she was wonderful though, and she totally, the thing is about like even senior citizens, they remember what it's like to be young, you know? I mean, not all of them maybe, but having a conversation with them, they totally remember. I mean, they're young people trapped inside this body that's deteriorating.
And did you find her beautiful?
I mean, she was to me because she was awesome. I loved her, you know? But I mean, I couldn't like parade her, I couldn't show her to Leo DiCaprio and be like...
Yeah.
So are we isolated because of technology, because of media, you know?
I think so. I think technology definitely, it allows us to go about things without the assistance of others. And so therefore we don't have to rely on the neighbor to help us out to do those sorts of things. I mean, it's funny, as I saw a recent study in one of the magazines I was reading about how the internet, they focused on people that were depressed, and their hypothesis was that people that participated in chat groups, because they had a way of outlet, they normally had, their depression would be alleviated more, so that what they found actually was that their depression went down, became worse because of the internet, even though they hypothesized the opposite. And so it's
you mean
isolating.
People in internet chat rooms?
Yeah.
Their depression became worse?
Became worse.
As opposed to like going to a place, meeting with a group of people in which depression gets better?
Or as opposed to people who didn't interact with anybody at all. So there's people that are isolated, okay, and they're not interacting with people, and then there's people that are isolated but decide to interact over the internet. As compared to those who didn't interact with anybody else, those that interacted over the internet, their depression got worse. And so it's like this, I don't know if it makes you more aware of that you're isolated, or, I mean, you think
about
that
7 or 8 years ago, I worked for a music publisher. Do you remember my rock and roll guy, Jimi Hendrix? And he said to me, I want you to watch for something. I want you to keep your eyes open for virtual reality. And I was all, what? You know, and he explained it as just more use of technology in the home and stuff. And I tend to be more of like a conspiratist. I'm in the Oliver Stone tribe, no. But I automatically envisioned like suburbia, right? Just like house after house after house. And people inside their houses never coming out. It was like an Edward Scissorhands thing or something. Just like in their house, interacting only over like waves and just, I don't know, being hooked up to machines and having all interaction gone. And so, I don't know, that totally freaked me out. I'm all, that can't possibly happen. But it seems like with our home shopping and our, you know, dial 1-800 or use your credit card or, you know, turn your computer on.
Do you think these companies sell technology as a way to increase intimacy and relationship? Take a look at, like there's that one commercial where the guy's flying on the plane and he faxes a letter to his wife who's at home, and from the airplane, and it arrives and says like, meet you at 8. So this technology enhanced their relationship. I mean, I think the salespersons of these technical companies or technology companies intentionally sell technology as a way of enhancing relationship and intimacy when it doesn't necessarily always do so.
Just means the guy didn't plan ahead far enough to have a romantic dinner for his wife. I mean, so you can think last minute now, and we're supposed to now.
Exactly.
That's how we live our lives. It's always last minute. It's always like, you know, at least me, and I'm always late. They can figure out how to make me not late with technology.
We're going to put a little implant that go below the time, all the time.
Yeah.
But at least, you know, they, like in the movie Matrix, you know, the guy says ignorance is bliss. You know, I'll embrace this. I'll just take this as my values, and then this is it. I don't want to think about anything more than that because it's so exhausting and difficult. There's nothing out there that is offered. But authentic authentic community of believers can offer the story, can offer embodied truth for them. And I think once they feel it, once they experience it, once they try it on, they see it, and they see that it fits life. It fits inner being. It's not just makes sense. It fits humanity.
The 20th century dared to think that they could create a society that didn't have God in it, and that's what they aimed for. And they felt that by doing that they would allow superstition to be washed away, and that the first warming rays of true human unity would be created. But unfortunately, as people have gone through the 20th century and got rid of God, they have found in their new godless society that all it has led to is fragmentation, isolation, and loneliness.
And I think there's an image that stays in both our minds, in fact, from the Caribbean. These little boys in ragged shorts making a kite out of plastic bags and the ribs of coconut palm leaves. And they were having the time of their lives working out how to cut it with a broken glass bottle, how to tie it with a bit of leftover string, you know. And they were enjoying themselves. And I contrasted them with the son of this friend of mine I knew who has this enormous playroom with every conceivable toy in it. And he'd say to me, Sharon, I'm bored. And I thought those kids would be pitied by his mother. They're poor, they're coming from a backward country, undeveloped and so on, but they're much more stimulated mentally than her son.
I think it's basically, you know, the more you have, you know, the less you enjoy it. And coming back to what you were saying, you know, about you know, the so-called nicer toys and cheaper toys. It's the same thing when you look at clothing, you know. A little kid who's like, I don't know, 10, 12-year-old, if he doesn't have a Nike Air Jordan, you know, pants or t-shirt, he's nothing. And his classmates, you know, will make him feel that he's just poor or just nothing.
Sure.
And I think the problem comes from, well, that's our society, but also the leaders, you know, the whole concept, you know. In sports, you know, there's a very, you know, good athletic guy, and he's gonna wear this kind of brand, whatever he's sponsored, and ultimately, you know, it's gonna create a need, which is the aim of, you know,
sure.
people.
There's money at the bottom.
Exactly, it's gonna create a need for little kids, or even, you know, just people to endorse, you know, these products, to wear these clothes, to buy this car, etc., etc.
Sure.
So I think, you know, this is very a typical thing of our Occidental society, that this will to create a need, you know, no satisfaction, never be satisfied, you know.
Well, if people get satisfied, whom do you sell to?
Economy will collapse. Yep. So, you know, that's the one problem I see with this whole, I think, urbanization, which is, in my opinion, linked to those always creation of new needs, is that you're never satisfied.
Yeah.
So I guess in this Occidental society, it's one very important element that makes our economy go, is the total, you know, no satisfaction.
Encouraging covetousness, basically. Whereas, if you remove covetousness, what would turn business round? Nothing.
Exactly. Same thing, you know, with nice cars, and it's not only little kids, you know, are subject to these kind of things.
Sure. One of the difficulties, though, and I think in a society like the one that we live in, where individualism is the be-all, that a lot of people make the mistake of assuming that the only thing that has value is something that's original. Well, in the end, what is original? That's another question. But I think, personally, I'm lucky that I grew up in a society which kind of straddles both ways of looking at things, and where the wisdom of old people is valued. So for instance, I spent a lot of my childhood listening to my great-grandmother tell me stories about when she was growing up and what happened to this person who made this choice and what happened to that person who made that choice. And in a sense, what she offered me was a chance to analyze the consequences of all sorts of different choices and not necessarily reinvent the wheel, including all the mistakes myself. Of course, I make my own mistakes, but I think I was lucky to grow up in a family where experience was valued a lot, and at the same time we were encouraged to think for ourselves, which wasn't always convenient for our parents, because I mean they would tell us that not always that like it themselves.
Rejecting other people's experience is still, in my opinion, showing some kind of dependence.
Sure, it's kind of immaturity.
Exactly, because you're still dependent vis-a-vis this experience because you reject it completely.
Sure, you're reacting.
Exactly. So it's still a reaction, you know, in a certain kind of dependence.
I think in a way, if you look at the society that we've had post-60s, if you're going to use a kind of turning point, that in many ways we're moving towards kind of reinventing the wheel again. I mean, there's certain values that, because mommy and daddy believed in them, we're going to throw them out, whether relating to sex or other family relationships or whatever. We're going to throw them out and reinvent for ourselves, and then find out painfully that perhaps they had a point about a few things.
So I think it's sometimes the way they present the things, the way they tell us about, you know, their opinions. Sometimes we feel that we're being stuck, you know, we're being enforced, we're being forced to follow their ways. Whereas sometimes I think if they would present it a bit, you know, in another way, that's just trying to give us advice rather than, you know, an order or whatever, I think it would help kids a lot more. And I think it's, in many churches, it's also the problem that you're being said, you're being ordered, you're being forced. You feel actually
programmed.
Exactly. Whereas maybe if, you know, those church leaders or other leaders would use other terms, other words, especially young people would
respond
accept
better.
Them. Exactly.
I think that one of the things that a lot of older people need to take into account is that one needs to distinguish more clearly between tradition and what I would call essential truth. And I think there are a lot of things that we want to project on younger people, whatever, as being absolutes and truths. And we're kind of scared to find out that they're perhaps just tradition.
And also, we're scared to put those traditions into question.
Absolutely.
We're so attached to that if we lose them, you know, it's like losing your
identity.
Identity, exactly. There's so much, you know, defining who you are that you're just scared. And I think, you know, it's fear that makes people very
dogmatic sometimes.
Yeah, dogmatic.
Because it's much easier than than answering properly. Just say, right, I've got this written answer here.
You know,
here it is.
Saint Augustinus would say, you know, people would do anything to have intellectual comfort.
Yeah.
You know, to be in their little warm shoes, just, you know, stuck in, as we would say today, stuck in their ways. Then to question things, to go out and, you know, just question things, be confronted to other points of view, because the other people might contradict you, and you might actually have to redefine your identity.
And sometimes
an identity that you have been trying to build for 50 or 60 years.
On sand sometimes, but we were attached to our sand.
Exactly.
The breakdown of relationships we see all around us, with statistics showing increases in all sorts of social, personal problems that people have, I think is due to one thing: people don't have friends anymore, and friendship would cure most of the social ills that we have, that we're all paying heavily for. Because nobody has time to be friends. We don't have time for friendship. We don't have time for friendship in the classroom. We don't have time for friendship in families, in marriage. We don't have time for friendship at work. To get friendship requires stopping, pausing, and thinking about each other as really valuable. And that ability to stop and pause is being taken away from us by the increasing demands, which are produce, more. What is a suicidal person? What is a alienated, lonely old man in a retirement village? What is a mother who's on the edge and ready to try anything to help her face her loneliness? It's friendship, lack of friendship. Friendship is the basis of a society. Friendship is the basis of a society that will make it human and keep it human. A society without friendship is a society of robots, of mechanical producers who relate to each other more as commodity rather than as companions.
The irony is at the moment that we live in a society where people are desperately trying to find themselves, but they're losing themselves in that. And I've noticed that there are quite a number of people who say that when they find a God who is bigger than them and who precedes them, that they find themselves drawn to a whole new sense of community, and that in that community they actually do find themselves again. And again, there is something that is ironical about that. In giving yourself to something which is bigger, you actually do find yourself.
It cannot be done by a program or a method. See, modernity has always been obsessed by programs and methods, and church is today. We will solve it, but it doesn't. Everything starts with understanding and with feelings. And once you change your way of thinking, and you change way of thinking of more people, it just materializes. It just happens. One of the ways you can see this materializing when you notice is that people are not afraid of the negative sides of the church. We give reality to people, and they respect that. And once reality is given, they start to believe the good part of reality, which is our hope, which is our passion, which is our love and patience and all of these things. When they see our brokenness, our personal doubts, our personal confusions and all of that, it doesn't repel them, it actually draws them.
As the world has got faster and faster, we've become more and more isolated. And the church has really messed up here because they said they were for community and for fellowship and for togetherness. But many people see it as into power, authority, and many people have actually been hurt in relationships at church. What we're really still seeking, however, is real spiritual community. And to find that, where we can be vulnerable together, where we can encourage each other, be there to support each other, that's the type of spiritual community I want to be part of.